Hello artists, and art appreciators. Welcome to this week's video. I will be trying my hand at the first time program called Blender, which is a program where you can digitally 3D sculpt things and also lots of other features that I don't know anything about. So I decided to just jump into this program with a character design that I had made before. Not her exact design, but I made a bunch of different concepts and I want to make a doll that is this kind of fish girl with a fish for a head and otherwise like a mostly human body. I've not used Blender before, so this is completely experimental like a lot of my other videos, and, you know, once again is a girl with a weird head, just like my mushroom sculpture. I also just wanted to take some time to sit down and chat about some stuff, so that's why I'm going for this kind of simpler video and format and everything. So if you've been following my community channel, you might have seen I did put up a poll at the beginning of December with two different options, and you'll notice that this video is neither of those options. So I'm very sorry for that. What happened was at the beginning of December, I was sick and I felt better, and so I posted that poll and I was like, I will get ready to finish a video now. And I was totally prepared to go back to working on my art projects, and then I got sick again, or the sickness came back, and my boyfriend was also sick. So for like 3 weeks of December, or end of November and December, we were both sick, and it was just a really rough time, and during that time, I just decided to randomly start recording this video of me trying Blender for the first time, and I thought I would put it on my YouTube channel and use it as an opportunity to explain where I'd been, and so I would have a video out at least sometime in December. I'm going out of state soon, so I don't know if I'll have another video ready, so I'm very sorry that that video is so delayed in getting out. I am working on a doll. I will post, like a preview of it soon, and I want to put a video out that is the first half of making the doll, just like I said in the poll. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I also have a Ko-fi and a Redbubble with fun and weird designs. Yeah, let's get back to the video. So as for this video about my mermaid character, you saw the designs earlier, but other than that, I basically just jumped in and completely winged it. So Blender is a 3D art program, like I said, with a lot of features, including sculpting. So I literally downloaded it and immediately just recorded what I made. As you may imagine, looking at all of the options here, it was a little confusing. I thought this video would be a good opportunity to talk about things like my sort of philosophy when creating art, which is that I just like to really jump right into things. People have really, I think, clocked into that watching my videos, because I think a few people have left comments along the lines of like, wow, you just really jumped into that thing that you don't know how to do at all. And I was like, yes, that is how I do art a lot of the time. Which, there are good and bad parts of. I did try and listen or watch some tutorials for Blender, but Blender is a very complicated program, and I just couldn't really wrap my head around using the tools without having tried them myself, essentially. A lot of times when I'm working with some new piece of media, I guess, like working with a new type of clay or working with a new art program, I like to try out how to use it, and then I go in and I look up how to use it more effectively, if that makes sense. I just find that I don't do very well if I try and learn the concepts prior to actually testing out a piece of art or a method of doing art, because I just don't I don't understand it until I really get my hands on it. So that's kind of what this entire video is me just trying to figure out Blender, and a lot of me doing the wrong thing, so I apologize for anybody who's used Blender before and knows how to use Blender. I pretty much just started out with the head, and I wasn't sure if I would do the whole body. I didn't even know if I would make this a video or not. I basically decided partway through that I would make it a video, but since I started out with the head, I was confronted with a lot of early challenges because the head on this character is like somewhat more complicated than the heads of a lot of most other characters, because she's also a fish and she has very thin walled fins. I was using a symmetry tool, and I noticed that the thinnest parts, so like the back fin and the top fin and this like bottom fin, the symmetry tool meant that sometimes the meshes, which I guess the mesh is like, this whole character is like a hollow net wrapped around like a body, and I'm just forming the sort of hollow net on the outside. Like, that's how I understand this program to work. And basically the mesh would like overlap with the other side, and I think that kind of messed some things up, especially like later on, because of me not knowing exactly how the program works, and like the mesh being very thin also, the program didn't like that. Yeah, just a lot of learning going on right here. When I was in high school, I did have some sort of sculpting program on one of my computers, and it was specifically for sculpting, and it had a lot less options than Blender, which might have kind of helped it because it was specifically just for 3D sculpting, so maybe it was a little easier to use, but I still only used it a few times. I wasn't like an expert at all, and as you can see, I'm making some interesting choices when trying Blender like this. I think I should have really gone for fleshing out like a proper shape and then adding in the details. That would have also really helped with just the anatomy. When drawing on paper or when sculpting with clay, that is basically how I work. Often if I'm working with like air dry clay, I'll make like one basic shape of air dry clay, like a tube, and then I'll add details so it becomes like an arm. But I'm not that experienced with Blender, and I didn't really think through very much. This was at the end of my sickness, and I hadn't done art in a little while also, so this is, you know, experimental and getting back into the groove of doing art at all. And I think I learned a lot about Blender and what, steps I needed to take that I kind of skipped over when I was just sculpting instead of doing sort of the anatomy of the whole figure first. I think that's a thing that a lot of artists learn early on when they're sketching on paper, is just you want your characters to... You want to draw your whole character first and then do, you know, like more details. When you're first starting out in art, you tend to like make a really detailed face and then go like, why can't I make the body look right on this face? Or you make a really detailed eye and you say, well, why can't I make the other eye that detailed? Why isn't the symmetry working? And the reality is you should, well, if you're doing symmetry, you should do one side at a time and work on both sides, unless you have a digital art program where the symmetry is automatic like this. And if you're doing a full body character, then you should probably draw the whole body with the head. So this is just a reminder to do that, really. By this point in the art piece, I had figured out how to use dye topo, which is a feature where it like adds essentially little triangles And I realized that the better way to do this was to make the die topo create larger triangles and fewer of them in order to flesh out shapes, and then add detail using a higher resolution die topo setting. Basically having smaller, more triangles versus fleshing things out using larger, fewer triangles. So I kind of got into the groove by the time I was doing the hands. And I actually had kind of a lot of fun doing the hands. Hands are really a difficult thing, I think, for most people to draw. And I think sculpting them is actually kind of more fun. One, because, like, I already have a reference, like my physical hand. And two, you're not worrying so much about how it looks at one angle because you can see it at multiple angles. I mean, obviously, the sort of final pictures will show it at one angle, so you're kind of worried about it looking right at one angle. But you can see it from multiple angles, so you know whether or not the angle that you're looking at is correct. I think that the hands, partially because, like I said, I wasn't thinking about the entire pose as much as the individual body parts. The hands end up in a kind of weird position. I think they look okay on their own. They're just oddly placed. The whole picture kind of feels a little bit stiff or like stilted. Like it's just a little bit off. And I know that. Like I said, I like learned a lot while doing this piece of art. I had a lot of fun doing the feet, which, like, at least I also have feet that I can reference while drawing. One fun fact about this art program is that I did this entire thing using my mouse. Normally when drawing digitally, I use my drawing tablet because that's the easiest way to do it. But for some reason, I started this project without using my drawing tablet and basically just continue until the coloring stage, doing everything with my mouse. So since Blender is a free program and you can use a mouse, I would point out that, like, you know, this kind of art program, like, is pretty easy, pretty accessible to, like, most people if you want to try sculpting like this. Once I was happy enough with most of the body, I decided to turn off the symmetry. I actually saved it as a new file, a duplicate file, and just do some adjustments. I wanted parts of her ears and fins to, like, be just a little bit asymmetrical, as well as her legs and feet, just so it didn't look completely, like, surreal, like, not too even. I tried to use the pose tool to move around her hand, but I had to use an editor tool instead, and then just kind of smooth and fill everything in. I'm, like, not happy with her hand ended up looking. I don't know, I couldn't quite figure out how to use the editing program. And looking back at it, it feels kind of silly, because even since then I've done more experimenting. It's only been a few days since I finished this, but I've been doing a lot of experimenting in the meantime with how to use Blender, and I've learned a lot, and so I'm already like, oh, I could have done this easier and this easier, but that's all part of learning. So I did a lot of the coloring off camera because, honestly, my computer was not really having it. Like, it didn't like the coloring features, but I was able to take the, basically, picture that I colored in Blender and move it into my art program so that I could add additional details using my art program. I'm sure if you're an experienced Blender person or just anybody looking, you can see that the automatically created, what is called like a UV texture, I believe, is a little bit messy. So in an ideal world, it would basically look like if you took a cube and you laid out all the pieces flat on a piece of paper. Like, you laid out all 6 square sides of the cube, and so it would just be a piece of paper with 6 cubes on it. That's basically what this program did to my character, but because, well, frankly, because I'm not that experienced and I just use it like an automated thing. I know there's other ways to do this, but they seem kind of confusing. It's a little bit messy, and so I couldn't add that much detail because it just would have completely gotten messed up when I put it in the art program. Instead, I just added like small details, like adding the scales, adding a little bit of texture to the pants, which wouldn't get messed up once I put it back on the doll. So you can see here that I did do some adjustments back once I'd taken the texture from my art program, put it back on the doll character. I'm calling her a doll because I still think of her like a doll because she's a doll that I want to make someday. So I just did some cleanup. There's something messed up with the fin where the colors for the top of her head and the fin are like the same thing. I don't know how this happened. If you know anything about Blender, feel free to let me know, but like there are some patches where the texture that I like created, the like UV editor texture, is the same for different parts of the character. And so that means that I can't really recolor one section without also messing up and like recoloring a different part. But that's just part of learning, is doing things a little bit wrong. I do like her face anyways. I felt like her face didn't have as many problems, and I just kind of cleaned up what I could in the end. Also, there was little bits of this fin where, like, the lines just didn't match up because, like I said, the UV texture map is a little bit messed up. I also did a lot of playing with the camera off screen in order to save different pictures of her. And here's the final result. I do like how she turned out. I think she's super cute. She's still a character that I really like having made, and I would like to sculpt her in like some sort of clay and paint sort of thing at some point. I think that I could make her into like a super cute 3D character using clay. And yeah, I hope you'll stick around to see that and to see other projects on my channel. So yeah, like and subscribe.